You're watching Insight Success. I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Umar A.K. Balwa, who has the distinction of being honored with multiple awards in the field of mechanical seals. And today we are going to walk our viewers through the journey of Mr. Balwa, which is not just inspirational, but also based on his article, Once a Sealman, Always a Sealman. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, my pleasure.
What's the importance of the date 5th November 1993?
It's an important day in my life, a milestone, I would say, when everything changed for me professionally. So I was young, age of 22, seated on a flight from Mumbai to Munich, and excited like a childlike excitement. I was seated on the window of the flight, and I could see the beautiful landscape of Germany, especially Munich is on the south of Germany, on the foot of the Alps. It cannot get more beautiful and more picturesque when you see Munich from the top of the flight. So I was visiting Fyodor Bergman of Germany to sign my collaboration with them. I deplaned. I was greeted very gingerly by a straight-faced German immigration officer, and he wished me Guten Morgen, and that's how they wish all visitors coming to Germany. And as customary as it is for any immigration officer to ask me for the purpose of my visit, and I proudly announced that I've come here to visit Fyodor Bergman of Germany.
So please tell us about how you got into the business of mechanical seals.
It's funny, it was sheer accident. I didn't intend to be in the business of mechanical seals, but God had different plans for me. I wanted to pursue ready-made garments after graduating from college. India and Bombay was a big hub for exporting ready-made garments from India all over to Western Europe and America. So with the initial investigation or the research that we did, and my family was convinced otherwise, that they should not venture into the business of ready-made garments. And this hugely disappointed me, because I was already conjuring images in my mind of getting into this high glamorous industry, meeting young models and who's who of the fashion industry, and that really disappointed me, and I was brooding with that sorrow, and I was redundant. I didn't have anything else to do in those days. I was hardly 22, and suddenly out of the blue, I remember the date because it's an important date for me. It was 18th of May 1989. That's when my older brother started a company called AK Engineering to honor in my father's name to start a business of mechanical seals. And I was sitting idle as usual because I had nothing to do. And my father just announced to me that I should be visiting Goregaon, AK Engineering, from tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. And how much ever comfortable you may be in your family setup, but one thing is very clear about such family setup, that something said by your father becomes something cast in stone, and you have to abide by it, how much ever you may not like what has been suggested to you. So I had no choice but to report to AK Engineering on 19th May 1989, and to my chagrin, it was totally a different industry. I didn't really understand. It was too complicated, too difficult as compared to my steady business of real estate and hospitality from where we came, and that's how my journey started in the business of mechanical seals.
So sir, at what age did you enter the business of mechanical seal, and how is it different from your family businesses like realty, hotels and restaurants?
I was 22 when I entered this business. As I mentioned earlier, it was by some kind of design from the Almighty. How much ever you may try to pursue something else, ultimately your destiny takes you to a journey which you least expect. So I entered the business at a very young age, totally different and opposed to a steady setup of hotels and restaurants and real estate. This required a lot of innovation. Every day was a challenge. The product is very niche, difficult to design, equally difficult to manufacture, and I would say impossible to sell, because the product is so critical to any process plant in a refinery or a petrochemical or an oil and gas application, that any failure can be catastrophic. It can create huge losses. It might create an accident which can be irreparable. So when we compare the business of my family and this mechanical seals, is totally different.
Back in the days, it was very difficult to get collaborations. So, what were the challenges you faced in doing so?
Yeah, back in the days when we talk about the early 90s, when the economy had not opened up, and it was still bureaucratic and it was still a license controlled environment. So to get a collaboration was extremely difficult, and especially to get a collaboration with a majority equity participation from a foreign partner was impossible. At the least, you would allow something close to about 25% of equity participation from a foreign company, and also the data was not available. Unlike today, you have readily available data on the net. You could search and you could contact those companies, and even the mode of communication was extremely expensive in those days. To make those ISD calls, it was costing about 200 rupees per minute, and you had to time all your calls whenever you made a call to a foreign country. Unlike today, it's virtually free. You can write an email, it will reach immediately the next second. In those days, we had to write letters. It would take 21 days if it reached.
Tell us about the famous Bergman AK Engineering joint venture.
Ooh, yeah, this gets me back. Images, come rushing to my forefront of my memory, and it is an interesting story, on its own. As I've said earlier, that the only way to move forward in this business was to get a collaboration, and I had incessantly written to many companies globally, and made those badgering calls to all those people about a collaboration, and people sitting in America or Europe really didn't understand what was the urgency for a foreign company to set up a shop here in India. And luckily my efforts paid rich dividends. I got a call and an email from Fyodor Bergman of Germany, and it was early in 1993 March, and they had told in their call and mentioned in their email that fax, that they would come and visit us for a joint venture assessment along with many other applicants. So I was excited. I thought my day is made, and I was behaving as if I had got the collaboration. Little realizing that there were many more formidable applicants who had more experience than me. I was the youngest of the applicants. People were there in this business in 1970s, and it was a tough fight between us and them. I gave a presentation to them in all my earnest, and I did my little bit and put my best foot forward. And after the assessment by the gentlemen and the team that had come from Germany, they decided to go with some other partner, and I was totally crestfallen. I was totally sad and full of remorse, and I didn't know. I thought as if I've lost everything. But then there is a never say die spirit in me. I was still keeping my hopes alive. And after a couple of days, I got a call from this German gentleman, and he said things didn't work out the way they had planned with the other applicant with whom they wanted to go ahead, and they said they would like to consider us. And I was as if I had met God, and that's how the story pans out. The famous story, AK Engineering Bergman collaboration, is known in the entire industry.
Tell us about the transfer of technology from a developed country like Germany to an underdeveloped country like India in 1993.
I mean, we're talking almost 30 years back, 3 decades, and in 3 decades, in today's parlance, it is 6 generations which have changed hands. So to inculcate or to really transfer technology from a developed nation like Germany to a country like India, which was still in its very nascent stage, coming out of its age and trying to become a powerhouse in the world order. So whatever we learned in Germany, especially I spent 3 weeks getting trained by the best of the people in the business of mechanical seals, and I was extremely surprised, and I was overwhelmed by the warmth and the openness and the transparency that I could see from my colleagues in Germany. They were open about sharing any information that I would ask for. They were highly cooperative and understanding, despite the cultural, differences that we came from. We were from the east, an underdeveloped country. They were from the west, one of the most developed countries globally. So to imbibe those learnings and to get it done here in India was a challenge.
When did Balwa Group end their joint venture with Fyodor Bergman of Germany?
It was in 2007. That's when we ended our joint venture with Fyodor Bergman of Germany. I mean, as I've said, that everything is destined from the Almighty. So after spending comfortable 17 years in this business, I was just getting relaxed, and the company was doing well. We were one of the largest companies in India in our field, and something changed in 2004 in Germany. The parent company got taken over by a larger group, which is called the Freudenberg Group. And I thought, how is it going to affect me? I'm sitting so far away. An event which has happened in Germany is not going to have any repercussion in India. And I was naive. It touched my doors, albeit in 2007 after 3 years. And that's when I got my first, intimation from the parent company that they would like to buy us out, and we were not interested in selling. So this went on for a long time, to and fro, back and forth, not negotiating actually, but we were trying to bring sense to them. Why should we sell our shares for a company that we have built with so much of passion and dedication?
Of course.
But they were insistent, and they had a different policy, and they had different philosophy of running joint ventures and subsidiaries globally. So we were not the only one which was bought out. All the joint ventures across the globe were bought out. So I was the last one to be acquired because I was big in size, I was highly profitable, and I was difficult to deal with. So that's how our joint venture ended with the Fyodor Bergman of Germany, and it was one of my saddest moments of my life, that I had to give up a company which I had built with so much of passion, and it had become a kind of a family, a second nature to me was mechanical seals.
How did you personally cope with the loss of a company that you had built with your own hands? And how did Sealmatic happen?
One can really never cope with the loss of a child. So Bergman in India was like a child for me. I entered this business at the age of 22. I had nurtured Bergman like my own child, and I treated my employees or my colleagues as a family. So I was entrenched into this business. I knew nothing else other than mechanical seals, and I had spent so many years doing this business day in and day out, and it had become a second nature. So for me to cope with the loss of Bergman, even to be really honest, even today, I consider that to be a loss personally for me. And how did Sealmatic happen? Again, everything happens by chance. I mean, that's the way my destiny is made. So I entered the business of mechanical seals by chance. I got the collaboration again, by chance, by stroke of luck. I ended the joint venture again by an act which was not in my control. It was not anybody's doing. And Sealmatic again is something which I didn't design. In fact, I had vowed never to enter this business of mechanical seals ever, because I didn't want to know anything about the company. I didn't want to be in touch with the industry. I had taken a hiatus, and I just wanted to be in oblivion and wanted to focus my energy on the family business of real estate and hospitality. I remember clearly in December 2011, my colleague Hanif walked into my room, and I was surprised because he paid me a visit after so many years. And incidentally, he was my first colleague and employee in AK Engineering. So Hanif and I go a long way back in history. And he asked me a simple question: why don't we manufacture mechanical seals? And I asked him quizzically, are you sure? Do you know what it entails to get into the business of mechanical seals? How painful it is? How difficult it is to get into the business of mechanical seals? And he said, yes, I know. And even I made these questions rhetorical. The answers were well within me and him. And while I was asking the questions, we both were equally convinced, yes, we can do it. But then I did remind him, Hanif, that we were 22 when we entered this business, and today we are in our mid 40s. Our energy levels may not be the same as young boys of 22 when we started out. But I think destiny had to play it out the way it has played out for me so far. And okay, we decided we'll get into the business of mechanical seal, and that's how the journey started in 2012, and Sealmatic was born.
Tell us about Sealmatic.
Yes, after the loss of my first child, as I would say in business, Sealmatic happened in 2012, and it is very close to my heart. It drives me. It gives me adrenaline. It gives me energy to go forward. I could have simply sat back and enjoyed my past success, but again getting into business and starting out, Sealmatic brought those immediate nostalgia of starting out as young boys, and it was challenging to start out again, to start out without a badge as big as Bergman, to be absolutely on your own and to walk the journey all alone. And but then this is what I decided to do, and I entered this business with great support from Hanif and his family. They took care of the production. I was mainly focusing on mechanical seals and selling them to the customers. And here I was, a bag in my hand, traversing states, cities, towns, countries, introducing myself as a beginner, though which I was not. I had so many years of success behind me, but when you start out afresh, you have to introduce yourself as a fresher. And sometimes customers were rude. They would not answer my calls. They would not want to meet somebody from India. And but I was persistent as I am, and I used to knock doors. And the more they would say no, the more I would become subtly aggressive in my approach with them. So that's the journey for Sealmatic.
Are you satisfied with the success of Sealmatic?
Yes, extremely. I could not have asked for more. In my second innings, my success in this business has been tremendous, and the customers have really, I would say, gone out of their way, have accepted me, have really respected me for what I have done in this industry, and were willing to give me a chance. And the journey so far has been extremely enjoyable, fulfilling, and of course it has its challenges. It has its hurdles. When things really got difficult, I would really and literally cry out loud, why the hell did I enter this business again? And then again, I would calm down and take one day as it is, and then move on to the next day. And but yes, there were challenges, there were shortcomings, there were hurdles, but we have overcome those hurdles in the last 10 years, and the journey is quite smooth at the moment, and we look forward to an interesting contribution to this industry as an indigenous manufacturer.
Was it difficult to take Sealmatic where it is today?
Yes, extremely. I mean, this industry is painfully slow moving, highly competitive technically. It requires a large amount of time, energy, and money to be successful in this business. So when we started out in our second innings as Sealmatic in 2012, we were very clear what we wanted to do, and absolutely even clearer what we didn't want to do. So we didn't want to repeat the same mistakes as we did back in the day, and whatever we learned from our association with Bergman in Germany, we wanted to model our plant in India on the same lines, make the company totally international, have all the certifications in place. And I'm proud to say that we are the only company which has got the API Q1, the ATEX, the FDA, EU, the GMP certification, and most importantly, recently we just got it about a month back, our certification from Department of Science and Industrial Research, which comes under the Ministry of Science and Technology.
Wow.
And being an MSME, to have this kind of investment into research and development calls for a huge order of investment of time, money, and energy. So that's one first for us over here. Besides the many other firsts such as API and so on and so forth. So the journey was difficult initially to get people on board, to train them to our expectations, to get them on board in designing, in manufacturing, and selling mechanical seals. So the challenges were there, but I would say honestly, as compared to other seal companies who have been in existence since 1970s, we are far successful. We have marched light years ahead of the local competition. So that's the journey for Sealmatic.
Tell us in brief about mechanical seals.
Mechanical seals per se, most of the people have not heard about it. It's a very niche, equipment. It is used for extremely critical applications in refineries, petrochemicals, oil and gas, power plants. So wherever we convey any fluid or a gas, a mechanical seal has to be employed to prevent leakages of exotic materials, to prevent any accident happening by spillage of the media. So it's a product which is extremely difficult to design, even more difficult to manufacture, and I would say it's impossible to sell unless you have that background and experience in this field. So when we talk about mechanical seals, they're extremely close guarded industry. Over the last century, there have been only 3 companies who are ruling the roost, and very few companies like Sealmatic have come and challenged their domain. So when we talk about mechanical seals, they are employed in pumps, compressors, agitators, or any kind of rotary equipments. So that's the application for mechanical seals.
Before we close the interview, sir, would you like to share any anecdote?
There's an interesting anecdote attached to my story, and for which I had published a small article about my journey, and it was titled as "Once a Sealman, Always a Sealman." So this anecdote applies to an interesting incident. While I entered the business of mechanical seals in my second innings as Sealmatic, one very learned and experienced gentleman from the industry, who was very senior to me, approached me and asked me, why are you entering this difficult business of mechanical seals? And he very well knew my family background. He knew I was financially well settled. I had nothing more to prove in the mechanical seal industry, and I could sit back and relax and enjoy. So it was a well-meaning question. He bore goodwill towards me, and what could I answer to this question? Um, it's simple. I entered this business at the age of 22. I knew nothing else other than mechanical seals, and every day was a challenge, and it's a difficult industry to be in. And once you are in the field of mechanical seals, nothing simple or straight would appeal to you. So that answers the question of the gentleman, and the response that I gave to him made us both smile. And I just simply said, once a sealman, always a sealman.